Hey guys, plot recap here. Today I'm going to explain the show Money Heist Season 2, released in the year 2017. All relevant links and information for the show will be in the description down below. If you haven't watched our Season 1 recap of Money Heist, click here to watch it now. Before we know more about it, you can support the channel by liking, subscribing, and activating the notifications. It's free and it really helps us to keep growing. Now let's dive in. When Season 2 of Money Heist begins, 2 years have passed since the robbers looted the Royal Mint. Now, each one of them is living in different parts of the world in luxury. Tokyo and Rio are still together, and now live on a remote tropical island to stay disconnected from the world. That is, until Tokyo decides she's craving more excitement in her life and gets an unregistered phone from the black market. Not long after, Tokyo and Rio's communication gets picked up by Europol. While Tokyo barely escapes her arrest, Rio is taken into police custody. Before the gang went their separate ways, the professor assigned handlers to them if they ever got in trouble. Now is the moment Tokyo desperately needs the professor, so she goes to Thailand with her handler. She reunites with the professor and Raquel, who agreed to help her. Then the gang assembles again. This time they've got 3 new members: Palermo, who is an old friend of Berlin's, Bogota, and Marseille. They're also joined by Monica, who goes by the name Stockholm, and Raquel, who's now called Lisbon. The professor decides to go back to Berlin's plan, to rob the Bank of Spain and strike one final blow to the corrupt establishment. The heist begins dramatically again, with the robbers raining money onto the streets of Madrid. They also get help from an elite team of hackers in Pakistan to broadcast screens across the city to reveal the truth to the public. The professor announces that Rio is being held illegally in the international territory and brutally tortured. Since the public loves the Salvador Dali gang, it takes little effort to set their plan in motion. The army gets deployed, and the gang gets easy access to the Bank of Spain disguised as a fake military squad. However, taking control of the building is difficult this time, due to the governor's fierce head of security, Cesar Gandia. He almost defeats the gang in the opening phase of their heist, but eventually gets handcuffed along with the other hostages. In the next shootout, Palermo gets glass fragments in his eye and is now partially blind. This time, the plan is to target the gold reserves of the country. Nairobi and Bogota gain access to the incredibly protected safe filled with gold using their scuba and welding gear. On the outside, Colonel Tomeo takes charge and plans to send in the army immediately. Luckily, the gang already has a plan. They get access to a second vault hidden behind the gold, which is filled with state secrets and threatens to release them if the army intervenes. Recall from Season 1 that Raquel is no longer in the police force, so a new negotiator is brought in, Detective Alicia Sierra. Even though she's pregnant, she's still as ruthless as ever since she's responsible for Rio's ongoing torture. Tension is growing inside the bank due to a fallout between Nairobi and Palermo. Nairobi isn't his biggest fan because he disrespects Helsinki, despite sleeping with him while they were preparing for the heist. The police are successful in creating conflict between the professor and Raquel before leaking fake state secrets to the media. Since nobody can differentiate between real and fake state secrets anymore, the police are about to strike the bank again. This time, the professor and Raquel find out about their plan just in time to inform the gang. The gang outsmarts the army sent in and takes them hostage. Now the police are forced to release Rio into the Bank of Spain in exchange for their army and 40 more hostages. You might remember Arturo Roman from Season 1 too. He turned his hostage experience into a media career by publishing a book, so the police call him in as an advisor. As Rio enters the bank and the hostages leave, Arturo runs inside as the doors are closing to become a hostage again. Meanwhile, the police are smart enough to plant a listening device in Rio's body before returning him. Even though the professor already trained the gang to remove such a device, they didn't let the police catch wind of this operation and continued to act normal. Right before the surgery, Rio breaks up with Tokyo, probably because of all the PTSD he has from his torture. Once the surgery is successful, the gang uses the tracking device to send the police off on a wild goose chase by putting it inside a rat and sending him up into the sewers. Outside the bank, the professor and Raquel face some car trouble and are spotted on a drone by the police. In this event, the plan was to scale a tall tree to camouflage themselves. Unfortunately, Raquel fails to climb the tree and runs to a nearby farm to hide. While negotiating with the farm owners, she gets caught by the police. Sierra continues her ruthless tactics by luring Nairobi to a window using her son. Taking advantage of Nairobi's distressed state, Sierra orders a sniper to shoot her in the chest. And if this wasn't enough chaos, the professor now thinks Raquel has been shot dead, so he allows the gang to use lethal force on the police. This takes the police squad by surprise, who pause their intervention plan. If anything, this buys the gang time to save Nairobi's life. While Nairobi pleads to be released to the police so her surgery can be successful, the gang argues about what to do. After a while, Tokyo takes over Palermo's leadership role and makes the final call to perform Nairobi's surgery herself. While the surgery goes on, Marseille rescues the professor, who arranges a 48-hour truce with the police to give Nairobi more healing time. Palermo is still furious over Tokyo's takeover and almost storms out of the bank before being restrained to a chair by Helsinki. The new gang leader, Tokyo, convinces the professor that Raquel probably isn't dead and could be inside the police tent. This prompts the professor to break inside the apartment of Colonel Tamayo's assistant, Antonanzas, and convinces him to send a message to Raquel. Inside the police tent, Raquel is about to give up when Sierra offers her a reduced life sentence and threatens to attack her mother and daughter. Thankfully, Antonanzas delivers the professor's message just in time and tells her something about the Paris plan. Now Raquel knows that all she needs to do is buy time. Palermo is desperate to get back in command at any cost, so he teams up with the restrained head of security, Gandia. He tells him to escape his handcuffs by dislocating his thumbs when Rio is on duty, since the poor guy is too traumatized to fire a gun. Gandia successfully escapes the hostage room and heads straight to Nairobi's recovery room to suffocate her. She fights back by stabbing him with a needle, so he runs to a secret panic room while disconnecting the professor's cameras inside the bank. Then, he uses a phone to contact Colonel Tamayo, but is asked not to launch an attack due to the 48-hour truce already announced to the press. Antonanzas informs the professor about Gandia's escape, but just as he informs Tokyo, she gets knocked unconscious from behind. Gandia restrains Tokyo inside the panic room before using the bank's intercom to inform the gang and hostages of her abduction. Tensions are rising inside the bank as Nairobi uses all her strength to go down to the vault to check the progress. The key objective of this heist is to melt Spain's gold reserve and turn them into tiny pellets. She delivers a rousing speech to boost morale to work quicker and harder before heading back to her room. The rest of the gang teams up to hunt down Gandia, but aren't very successful. When Gandia sees Rio and Denver entering an elevator, he throws a grenade inside just before the doors close. Even though the two gang members survive by piling their bulletproof helmets and vests over the bomb, it's still a very close call. Gandia rushes through the air vents to Nairobi's room and places her in a headlock to use as leverage. On the outside, the professor discovers the location of the bank's panic room by digging out the blueprints. He also sends Marseille to Algeria to find any evidence about the torture Sierra did to Rio. Gandia shoots his gun through the door to make a large hole and forces Nairobi's head through it to negotiate with the gang. They agree to let Gandia escape, and he exits with his gun still pointed at Nairobi's head. At that moment, he turns on his word and shoots Nairobi dead before running to his panic room. Denver throws a grenade at Gandia, but it isn't enough to stop him. The gang finds his panic room and cut off the telephone line to isolate Gandia from the police outside. When he frees Tokyo to treat his wounds, she knocks him unconscious. Now the professor's latest strategy is to bombard the police with crises that create distractions from the heist. He draws attention to Rio's illegal torture by Spanish authorities and provides indisputable proof of it. This humiliates Colonel Prieto in a press conference, so Tamayo tells Sierra that she must take full responsibility for the torture to protect the armed forces. But Sierra isn't one to comply so easily. She chooses to bring everyone down with her by telling the press that every single senior figure in the force and the government approved the torture. As a result, she gets dismissed from the force. Taking advantage of this weak moment, the professor announces to the public that Raquel is being illegally detained in the police tent outside the bank. This tactic forces the police to put Raquel in a transfer vehicle and take her to jail, giving the professor a chance to intervene. The professor's associates intercept Raquel's transfer vehicle and put her in a fake police helicopter. To make this plan work, the gang forces Gandia to order a rescue craft from Tamayo. Two police crafts in the air create a lot of confusion, and Raquel gets dropped off at the bank with zero suspicion. While the professor and the gang celebrate her arrival and plan to avenge Nairobi's death, Sierra has been doing off-the-buck investigations of her own. She successfully locates the professor's hideout and sneaks up from behind. Finally, she puts a gun to his head saying, "Checkmate." That was all from the video. I hope you liked it. Subscribe for more content like this and hit the like button to help us out. Also, leave a comment if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Until next time, take care.